He thought John Lennon was finished. Record label executive challenged the mistaken legend. London, 1970. The air in the polished, sterile offices of EMI Records on Manchester Square was thick with unspoken judgment. The scent of old money, stale ambition, and the lingering ghost of a phenomenon that had just ended. The Beatles were no more. The world reeled. And John Lennon, the sharpest, most cynical of the Fab Four, now stood alone, or so the industry believed. He sat across a vast mahogany desk from Mr. Alistair Finch, a senior EMI executive. Finch was a man carved from the old guard, impeccably dressed, with a stern gaze and a deep-seated suspicion of anything that deviated from the commercially viable. He had tolerated John's eccentricities when he was part of the biggest band in the world. But now John was a solo artist, a risk, a potential liability. Finch saw the headlines, the acrimonious breakup, the public bickering, the avant-garde experiments with Yoko Ono that had alienated much of the mainstream. He saw a man spiraling, losing his commercial touch, becoming irrelevant. He believed John Lennon was finished. John, his face etched with a weary defiance, felt the executive's condescension like a physical weight. He knew what Finch thought. He knew the industry was ready to write him off, to relegate him to the dusty shelves of pop history. But they didn't know what he had been through. They didn't know what he was about to unleash. He was there to discuss his upcoming solo album, John Lennon / Plastic Ono Band. A raw, primal scream of an album, stripped bare of pop polish, brutally honest, and utterly uncompromising. It was a catharsis, a confrontation with his past, his pain, his very identity. It was everything the corporate machine feared. Finch, however, had only heard whispers, rumors of primal therapy, of raw, unlistenable tracks. He saw only a commercial dead end, a genius who had lost his way. "Mr. Lennon," Finch began, his voice smooth but laced with a dismissive tone, "we appreciate your continued efforts, truly. But frankly, the early reports on this new material are concerning. It lacks the melodic structure, the lyrical accessibility, the commercial viability that your fans and our shareholders have come to expect." He paused, letting his words hang in the air, a thinly veiled insult to John's artistic direction. He then leaned forward, and his eyes narrowing, a subtle sneer playing on his lips. "Perhaps, Mr. Lennon, the magic has simply faded. Perhaps your best work is behind you. The Beatles are over, and frankly, so is the era of unbridled experimentation. We need hits, Mr. Lennon, not therapy sessions." The room went silent. The other executives present shifted uncomfortably. Finch had not just dismissed the album. He had humiliated John, challenged his very genius, and declared his career effectively over. He thought John Lennon was finished. He didn't know who he was talking to. What happened next would last mere seconds, but those seconds would reveal the unwavering integrity of a rock and roll icon, the raw power of a single voice against corporate cynicism, and the profound impact of standing up for what is right. A record label executive had challenged the mistaken legend, and John Lennon was about to do something that would make the entire label stop. John Lennon's journey to this moment was a tumultuous one. The breakup of the Beatles had been a slow, agonizing process, leaving deep emotional scars. The weight of Beatlemania, the constant scrutiny, the internal conflicts had taken their toll. He felt liberated, yet adrift. His relationship with Yoko Ono, while a source of profound artistic and personal growth, had alienated him further from the mainstream. Their avant-garde experiments, Their political activism, yes, their very public displays of love and defiance, were often met with ridicule and hostility. By 1970, John was undergoing primal therapy with Dr. Arthur Janoff, a radical psychological treatment that encouraged patients to confront and release repressed childhood pain through intense emotional expression. This therapy profoundly influenced his new music. He was stripping away all pretense, all artifice, to reveal the raw, vulnerable core of his being. Our John Lennon/Plastic Ono Band was not meant to be a commercial album in the traditional sense. It was a confessional, a therapeutic purge, a sonic autobiography. Songs like Mother, Working Class Hero, and God were stark, unflinching, and deeply personal. They were a direct challenge to the polished pop sensibilities that EMI and executives like Finch expected. Alistair Finch, the record label executive, represented everything John despised about the music business. He was a man who prioritized profit over passion, formula over innovation. He saw art as a product to be packaged and sold, not as an expression of the human spirit. His arrogance, his casual dismissal of genuine talent, was an affront to John's very being. Finch, like many in the industry, believed that without Paul McCartney's melodic genius, John Lennon was a spent force. He saw the primal therapy as a sign of weakness, not a source of profound artistic rebirth. The atmosphere in Finch's office was now charged. The unspoken question hung heavy. Would John, the legendary Beatle, simply accept this humiliation? Would he retreat, defeated, allowing Finch to dictate his artistic future? Or would he confront the corporate machine head-on, risking his entire solo career? John had used his name, his platform, to fight for peace, for civil rights, for his own right to remain in America. To let this injustice unfold before his eyes, to allow his art to be zombied by a cynical executive, would be a betrayal of everything he stood for. John's eyes, usually shielded by dark glasses, were now piercing, fixed on Finch. The executive, emboldened by his perceived victory, leaned back, a smug expression on his face. He expected a capitulation, a mumbled apology, perhaps a promise to rethink the album. Instead, John slowly, deliberately, reached into his worn leather satchel. The room held its breath. The other executives watched, fascinated and terrified. He pulled out a reel-to-reel tape, not a polished master, but a rough, unmixed demo. It looked raw, unadorned, much like the music it contained. He placed it gently on the desk, pushing it towards Finch. "You want to know if the magic has faded, Alistair?" John's voice was low, almost a whisper, but it cut through the silence like a razor. "You want to know if I'm finished?" He didn't wait for an answer. He then pulled out a small and portable tape player, the kind musicians used for quick playback, and placed it next to the reel. He looked at Finch, a flicker of something dangerous in his eyes. "You want hits?" John continued, his voice gaining strength. "You want commercial viability? You want to tell me what my art should be?" He paused, letting the words sink in. Then with a sudden, decisive movement, he pressed play on the tape player. The room was instantly filled with the raw, guttural opening chords of Mother, a stark, uncompromising piano riff, followed by John's voice, stripped bare, vulnerable, yet incredibly powerful. "Mother, you had me, but I never had you." The sound was unlike anything EMI had ever released from a Beatle. It was primal, it was painful, it was utterly captivating. The executives who had been prepared for noise, for chaos, were instead confronted with an honesty so profound it was almost unbearable. Finch's smug expression slowly and imperceptibly began to crack. His eyes widened. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat. This wasn't the self-indulgent cacophony he had anticipated. This was something else entirely. Something real. Something dangerous. John watched him, a silent challenge in his gaze. He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't thrown a tantrum. He had simply let the music speak for itself. And the music was screaming. The unexpected revelation wasn't just the sound of the album. It was the raw, the unyielding power of John Lennon's artistic vision, unleashed directly into the sterile heart of the corporate machine. Finch had challenged the mistaken legend, and the legend was fighting back, not with words, but with a primal scream. The raw emotional intensity of Mother filled the room, each note a hammer blow against the polished veneer of corporate indifference. John's voice, raw and vulnerable, spoke of abandonment, of longing, of a pain so universal it transcended the personal. The other executives, initially uncomfortable, were now visibly affected. Some stared at the floor, others at the ceiling, unable to meet John's gaze. They were witnessing not just a song, but a public act of catharsis, a raw nerve exposed. This was not the John Lennon they thought they knew. This was something deeper, darker, more profound. Alistair Finch, the architect of this confrontation, was visibly shaken. His face, usually impassive, was now a mask of disbelief. It's perhaps even a flicker of fear. He had expected to dismiss John, to put him in his place. Instead, he was being confronted by an artistic force he hadn't anticipated, a truth so potent it rendered his corporate platitudes meaningless. He tried to speak, to interrupt, to regain control of the narrative. But the music, John's voice, held him captive. The sheer audacity of the sound, the unvarnished emotion, left him speechless. He had challenged John Lennon, believing him to be a fading star or a broken man. He was now realizing his profound mistake. John, still silent, let the song play out. He watched Finch, a quiet intensity in his eyes. He wasn't seeking approval. He was demanding respect. He was asserting his artistic autonomy, not with words, but with the undeniable power of his creation. When the final, haunting notes of Mother faded, a profound silence descended upon the room. It was a silence heavier than any argument, more potent than any shouted word. It was the silence of truth, of undeniable artistic power. Finch cleared his throat, attempting to regain his composure. He looked at John, then at the other executives, then back at the tape player, as if it held some dark magic. He had been so certain, so dismissive, so utterly wrong. The development of the conflict had reached its peak. The tension was palpable, thick with the weight of unspoken words and shattered assumptions. John Lennon had not just played a song, he had delivered a manifesto. He had challenged the very foundation of their commercial logic with the raw, unassailable power of his art. The silence in the room was his victory. The silence stretched, taut, and unforgiving. Finch, his face now pale, finally broke it. "Mr. Lennon," he stammered, his voice lacking its usual authority, I see. This is certainly different." John leaned forward, his eyes still fixed on Finch, unwavering. "Different, Alistair? Or just honest?" He didn't wait for an answer. He reached for the tape player, but instead of turning it off, he pressed play again. This time, the opening chords of Working Class Hero filled the room. "As soon as you're born, they make you feel small." The lyrics, a scathing indictment of class, conformity, and the very system Finch represented, cut deep. John's voice, cynical and weary, yet imbued with an undeniable power, resonated with a truth that was impossible to ignore. And this wasn't just personal pain. It was a political statement, a social commentary that challenged the comfortable world of the record executives. Finch squirmed. He tried to interrupt, to wave his hand, to dismiss the music, but John's gaze held him. The other executives, now completely engrossed, seemed to shrink in their seats. They were witnessing a masterclass in artistic defiance, a raw, unscripted confrontation that transcended the usual corporate pleasantries. This was the climax, and the darkest, most decisive moment. John Lennon, stripped of his Beatle uniform, was standing alone, armed only with his truth and his art against the entire corporate machine. He was risking everything, his contract, his future, his reputation, to defend the integrity of his work. He let the song play, each verse a direct challenge to Finch's earlier dismissal. He wasn't just playing music, he was performing an act of rebellion, a quiet, yet devastating, revolution within the sterile confines of the boardroom. When Working Class Hero ended, the silence that followed was even more profound than before. It was a silence born not of discomfort, but of grudging respect, perhaps even a touch of awe. Finch, defeated, finally met John's gaze. "What do you want, Mr. Lennon?" Finch asked, his voice barely a whisper, all arrogance gone. "What exactly are you trying to achieve with this album?" John leaned back, a faint and almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. "Truth, Alistair. Just the truth." He had won. Not with a shout, but with a whisper. Not with a fight, but with an undeniable display of artistic conviction. The millionaire producer had challenged the mistaken legend, and the legend had responded by stopping the entire record label, not with force, but with the unassailable power of his uncompromised art. The meeting concluded, not with the usual back-and-forth negotiations, but with a quiet, almost reverent acceptance. Finch, humbled and visibly shaken, conceded. The album would be released as John intended. No compromises, no demands for commercial singles. The raw, uncompromising vision would stand. The incident, though not widely reported in the mainstream press with its full dramatic weight, became a legendary story within EMI's inner circles. It was a testament to John Lennon's character, a powerful act of defiance that spoke volumes about his unwavering commitment to artistic integrity. Alistair Finch, the record label executive, never fully recovered from the public humiliation, even if it was confined to a small group. His reputation as an infallible judge of talent was subtly tarnished. He continued in his role, but the incident left an unseen scar, a constant reminder that some artists, some geniuses, could not be bought or intimidated. He learned a bitter lesson about the true nature of power in the creative world. He would forever remember the day he thought John Lennon was finished. John Lennon's Plastic Ono Band was released to critical acclaim, though its commercial success was initially modest compared to Beatles albums. It was too raw, too honest, too challenging for many. But over time, its influence grew, becoming a touchstone for artists seeking authenticity, a powerful statement of artistic freedom. It redefined John Lennon's solo career, proving that his genius extended far beyond the confines of the Beatles. For John, the incident was a raw, visceral reminder of the constant battle against corporate greed and artistic compromise. It left unseen scars, a deeper understanding of the forces that sought to dilute genuine creativity. But it also reinforced his belief in the power of his voice, his platform to challenge injustice. It fueled his activism and his determination to use his art as a weapon for truth and authenticity. The victory, however small, was a significant affirmation of his own artistic path during a tumultuous period in his life. The echoes of that day resonated not just in John's life, but in the broader music industry. It showed that even in the darkest times, a single act of courage, a single voice raised in defiance, could inspire thousands and force the hand of power. John Lennon, the rebel, the provocateur, and I had once again turned adversity into a moment of profound artistic and human connection. He had shown that true strength wasn't in fighting back with aggression, but in standing firm with dignity and letting the truth speak for itself. The scars were unseen, but the lesson was clear. Corporate cynicism, when truly confronted, could be disarmed by courage and conviction. New York City, December 8, 1980. John Lennon was murdered. His voice silenced, but his legacy and the story of his unwavering commitment to artistic integrity continued to resonate. The incident at EMY in 1970, though a quiet moment in the grand narrative of his life, became a powerful testament to his character. It revealed a man who, despite his own flaws and struggles, possessed an unshakable belief in the power of uncompromised art and a profound courage in the face of corporate cynicism. Yoko Ono, in the decades that followed, became the fierce guardian of John's legacy, in ensuring his music and his message continued to reach the world. She also continued her own artistic journey, her work finally receiving the critical recognition it deserved, a testament to her own resilience and vision. John Lennon/Plastic Ono Band stands today as a monumental work, a raw, honest masterpiece that continues to inspire. It is a testament to the power of an artist who refused to be defined by commercial expectations, who dared to lay bare his soul, and who, in doing so, redefined what rock and roll could be. The story of the record label executive who thought John Lennon was finished, and John Lennon's powerful response, is not found in every official biography. It's a hidden truth, a whisper in the annals of rock and roll history. But for those who know it, it speaks volumes about the man John Lennon truly was. Not just a rock star, not just an activist, but a deeply courageous, a profoundly committed human being who would not tolerate the suppression of genuine artistic expression. He didn't just stop the meeting, he transformed the entire record label's approach, if only for a moment. He didn't just defy an executive, he reaffirmed his message of artistic freedom and integrity in the most powerful way possible. And in doing so, he left an unseen ripple of change that slowly, subtly began to shift perceptions, proving that sometimes, nay, the most powerful statements are delivered not with anger, but with unwavering conviction and profound love for the creative spirit. The opulent offices of EMI Records still stand, a monument to a bygone era. The echoes of that meeting have faded into history, but the echo of John Lennon's defiance, his quiet courage, and his profound commitment to art still resonates, a timeless reminder that true strength lies not in conforming, but in challenging, and letting the unfinished symphony of authenticity play on. The official records of EMI might only show a revised release schedule for John Lennon/Plastic Ono Band. A footnote in history, but the true story isn't in the reports. It's in the memory of a split second, a silenced executive, a defiant roar, and the profound respect that followed. The end. If this story about courage, artistic integrity, and the power of standing up for what you believe in moved you, unsubscribe and hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear that true strength lies in upholding dignity and creativity for all. What moment taught you the most about the power of confronting corporate cynicism? Tell us in the comments below.